I never thought a wedding would end with someone in handcuffs. But here we are. And the worst part? It wasn't even the biggest surprise of the night. No one expected what was coming, not even close. It all started like any other wedding. Beautiful venue, flowers, fancy food, people pretending to like each other. I was just there to support my cousin, the groom. Or so I thought. He looked nervous, sure, but don't all grooms? Everyone was smiling, drinking champagne, taking photos. The ceremony went off without a hitch. The chaos didn't start until the speeches. When my brother stood up, I thought he was going to tell some stupid story from college. You know, the usual embarrassing stuff. What he actually said silenced the whole room. He raised his glass, looked at the bride, then looked at the groom, and said, "Before we toast, I have something to confess." That's when everything spiraled out of control. People froze. The band stopped playing mid-song. Even the waitstaff paused. My mom dropped her fork. The bride's face turned ghost white. She knew. Somehow, she knew what was coming. Then he said it. 7 words. Just 7 damn words. I've been sleeping with the bride weekly. I swear, the air got sucked out of the room. And then, the screaming started. The groom didn't move. He just stared at my brother like he couldn't process what he heard. The bride? She burst into tears and ran down the aisle, like a scene straight from a drama movie. But this wasn't fiction. This was raw, real life. And in that moment, I swear you could feel every single person in the room stop breathing. My aunt screamed. Someone knocked over a table. Glass shattered. The DJ tried to play music again, like that would fix anything. It only made it worse. My dad grabbed my brother by the arm and whispered something. I couldn't hear it over the noise, but my brother just shook his head. He wasn't done. "You deserve the truth," he said. "I'm not proud of it, but I won't stand here and pretend like it didn't happen." His voice didn't shake. It was steady, dead serious. Then he looked straight at the groom. "She told me she didn't love you." The room gasped. The bride's mother fainted. Literally fainted. Someone had to catch her. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the groom finally moved. He walked over to my brother, slowly, calmly, then punched him in the face. Panic exploded. Chairs flew. People started screaming. The wedding was over. But for our family, this was just the beginning. My brother fell back, nose bleeding, but he didn't even fight back. He just sat there on the floor, staring up at the groom like he'd expected it. The groom's hands were shaking. You could tell he wanted to hit him again. But instead, he turned around and stormed out. Not toward the exit, toward the bride. She was curled up on the floor, surrounded by friends, crying. Her makeup smeared like a melting painting. When he reached her, he knelt down beside her. "Why?" he asked. Just one word. Broken. Defeated. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just looked at her like a man whose whole world just collapsed. She couldn't answer. She just kept saying, "I didn't mean for this to happen." Over and over, like some kind of prayer. As if that would undo everything. The silence that followed was unbearable. Everyone was watching them. Guests, family, staff, all frozen like statues. No one knew what to say or what to do. And then, my grandmother, 92 years old. She stood up slowly, using her cane for balance, and whispered, "This family has hidden too much for too long." That's when I realized this wasn't just about an affair. This wedding was about to dig up secrets buried decades ago. And no one was ready for that. My grandmother's voice cut through the noise like a knife. Everyone turned to look at her. Her hand was trembling, but her eyes, sharp, cold, like she'd been waiting years to say this. He's not the first man in this family to cheat, but at least he had the guts to confess. Her words echoed. People whispered. I saw my uncle flinch. Something was off. Then she looked directly at my father. "You think your secrets died with her?" My dad's face went pale. My mom stood up suddenly, knocking over her chair. She knew what was coming. "Tell them, Daniel," Grandma said. "Tell them what you did to your brother." Gasps. Real, audible gasps filled the room. I felt my stomach drop. What the hell was she talking about? My dad clenched his fists. "Now's not the time," he growled. But Grandma wouldn't stop. "You made him leave. You made him disappear. And you told everyone he was dead." Silence. My heart was racing. My father had a brother? A dead one? No one ever mentioned him. No pictures, no stories, nothing. How do you erase someone from an entire family? The groom was still kneeling next to his wife. He looked up, stunned. "What is happening right now?" he asked. But nobody had an answer. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. Where is Uncle Paul? I finally asked. My voice shook. My father didn't reply. Instead, he sat down, buried his face in his hands, and whispered one word that haunted me. Prison. The room went quiet again. A thick, electric silence. I looked at my dad, but he didn't move. His hands still covered his face. Prison, he had said. That word didn't feel real. It cracked something open inside me. What did he do? I asked louder this time. My voice echoed off the high ceilings. Grandma sat down slowly, her eyes still locked on my father. He didn't do anything, she said. He took the blame. For Daniel. My brain couldn't keep up. I looked from her to my dad, who was now shaking. You let your brother go to prison for you? I asked. No one answered. My dad didn't deny it. And that silence screamed louder than words. The guests didn't know where to look anymore. The bride had stopped crying, staring at us like she'd wandered into a horror movie. The groom looked like he might throw up. This wasn't a wedding, it was a war zone. Grandma took a slow breath. Paul was 22. Your dad was 19. There was a fire. A boy died. They thought it was Paul's fault. Your dad said nothing. And Paul, he protected him. The words felt heavy, like wet cement. My uncle had been erased. All because he took the fall for something my dad did. And none of us ever knew. My childhood suddenly felt fake. Like every memory was built on a lie no one dared to question. He's still alive? I asked, not even sure what answer I wanted. My grandma nodded slowly. Last I heard, he was out, living alone. He never came back. He never forgave us. And I don't blame him. The groom stood up, his voice shaking. So we're all just liars now? No one replied. Because, in that moment, we all were. Even the bride looked relieved, as if our mess had buried hers. And it kind of had. I was still processing everything when my cousin, the bride's sister, came up to me. She leaned in and whispered, I think he was here. I blinked. Who? I asked, confused. Your uncle, Paul. I think I saw him earlier, near the back, just watching everything. Alone. That hit me like a truck. Are you sure? I asked. She hesitated. No, but the man looked just like your dad, only older. Same eyes, same jawline. But his stare, it was like he was holding back years of pain. I turned around, scanning the crowd. Half the guests were gone, the rest whispering in stunned clusters. I rushed toward the back rows, where she said she saw him. But the chair was empty. No sign of anyone. There was a paper napkin folded neatly on the seat. I picked it up, heart pounding. Written in sharp, shaky handwriting were 5 words. I saw it all. Goodbye. That's all. No name. No number. But I knew it was him. Suddenly, all the oxygen left my lungs. My hands trembled. He had come. After decades of exile, my ghost of an uncle had returned just to witness the collapse of the family that betrayed him, and then vanished again. I held the napkin like it was sacred. My brother walked up, bleeding lip and all, and looked at it. Is that? I nodded. He looked like someone had punched him in the soul. We ruined everything, huh? He said. Behind us, Grandma stood silently, watching us. For the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. The woman who ruled this family with steel and ice was breaking. And maybe she deserved to. Maybe we all did. The groom came over, hands still trembling. So what now? He asked. None of us knew. The wedding was over. But something much bigger had just begun. And we all knew. We couldn't run from it anymore. That night after the guests left, we sat in the living room, what was left of us. My dad still hadn't said a word. My mom sat stiff beside him. Grandma stared at the fireplace like it was talking back to her. Tell us, I finally said. The truth. No more lies. My voice sounded older somehow, like I'd aged 10 years in one evening. My father looked up at me, eyes red, jaw clenched. He nodded once, slowly. It was an accident, he began. His voice cracked. We were drunk, just messing around in that old shed behind the house. Paul had lit a cigarette. I knocked over a can of gas. It went up so fast. My mom gasped softly. My dad continued. A kid had snuck in, neighbor's boy. We didn't even know he was there until we heard him scream. We tried to get him out. Paul burned his hands trying. He paused, swallowed hard. But it was too late. The firemen came. The place collapsed. They blamed Paul. He didn't argue. He just looked at me and said, keep your life. I'll lose mine. The room went still. Even the walls felt like they were listening. My brother looked away, ashamed. I couldn't breathe right. Everything I thought I knew about my dad, about our family, was crumbling. Why didn't you ever tell us? I asked. My voice broke. My dad didn't answer. He just looked down at his hands, the same hands that ruined a life and let another take the fall. Cowardice disguised as silence. Grandma finally spoke. I told him to stay quiet. I thought protecting the future meant burying the past. I was wrong. Her voice was thin, fragile, and I realized, for the first time, she wasn't the strong one anymore. We sat there in silence, surrounded by shattered glass and old secrets. My brother was the first to break it. "We have to find him," he said. "We owe him that much." I nodded. It felt obvious, necessary, but my dad didn't agree. "He doesn't want to be found," he said coldly. "He came. He saw. He left. That's the end of it." His voice was sharper now, like he was hiding behind anger instead of shame. "You don't get to decide that," I snapped. "You let him rot for something you did. The least you can do is face him." My mom put her hand on my arm, but I shook it off. I couldn't let this go. Grandma nodded. "He deserves a choice. Whether he wants to speak to us or not, that's his right. But we have to try." Her voice was calm but firm, the kind of tone that silences rooms. And it did. Dad stood up suddenly. "He's not the only one who lost something," he said. "I lost a brother. I've carried this guilt for 40 years. You think I'm proud of any of this?" His eyes were wild with grief. "Then act like it," my brother said quietly. "Stop hiding behind excuses. We're not kids anymore. We can fix this, or at least try. But we can't do that if you keep pretending none of it matters." Dad sat back down. The fight left him like air from a balloon. He looked smaller, older, broken. "You won't find him," he whispered. "Even if you try. He's good at disappearing." But he didn't say no. That was enough for me. "Then we start with that napkin," I said. "Handwriting, paper type, fingerprints, whatever. If he left a trace, we'll follow it." For once, I felt like we weren't just broken, we were moving. The next morning, everything felt unreal, like the world had shifted overnight. The decorations were still up, but no one cared. My cousin's wedding had turned into something else, something deeper, darker. I kept staring at that napkin. 5 words written by a ghost. I didn't know much about tracking people, but I knew someone who did. A friend from college, Jess, who worked in digital forensics. Quiet, smart, brilliant. I texted her a photo of the handwriting and the paper. She replied almost instantly. "That's old stock. Real specific texture. I've seen it before in prison outreach programs. I'll dig." I thanked her, heart racing. Meanwhile, I sat with my brother in the kitchen. Just the two of us. No yelling, no drama, just silence and coffee. "Do you think he even wants to see us?" I asked. He shrugged. "Maybe not. But I want to be found." That hit me. Simple words, honest ones. Not heroic, not dramatic, just real. The kind of truth that lives in the quiet corners of your heart, where regret hides. That's when I knew. This wasn't about redemption. It was about responsibility. Jess texted back 2 hours later. "Got something. A handwriting match. Someone named Paul H. in a small town 2 hours away. Changed his last name. Low profile. Off the grid, but not invisible." My pulse spiked. I told my family. Dad went pale again. Mom looked scared. Grandma nodded like she'd known all along. "He's giving you a chance," she said softly. "Don't waste it." We packed bags that afternoon. It felt like a pilgrimage. As we pulled out of the driveway, the house behind us looked smaller than ever. Not just physically, emotionally. Like a place full of ghosts finally set free. We were going to find him. And this time, we'd listen. The town was quiet. One of those places where time moved slower, where gas stations had chipped paint and everyone knew each other's names. It didn't feel like a place to hide. But maybe that was the point. We checked into a small motel off the highway. The kind with flickering signs and walls that smelled like dust and coffee. I couldn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling, thinking about a man I'd never met but already missed. Jess had sent us an address. Said the man lived alone, worked odd jobs, stayed off social media. "He's careful," she warned. "Don't scare him off." I nodded, heart heavy. We had one shot at this. The next morning, we drove in silence. My dad was with us. He hadn't said much since we left, but I saw him gripping the door handle like it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. We pulled up to a worn-out cabin on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. A broken swing. An old pickup out front. But something about it felt solid. Like the kind of place you go when the world forgets you, and you forget it back. I stepped out first. My legs felt like concrete. Every breath was shallow. My dad didn't move. He just stared at the front door. What if he slams it in our face? He whispered. I didn't know what to say, so I just walked. I knocked once, then again. No answer. My heart was pounding in my throat. I was about to turn away when I heard it, the sound of a lock turning. Slow, hesitant. And then, the door cracked open. He looked older than I imagined. Thinner. But those eyes, they were my father's eyes. Tired, wounded, still sharp. He didn't say a word. He just looked at us. And I swear, in that moment, everything else disappeared. He didn't invite us in. Just stood there, hand still on the door. Eyes scanning our faces like trying to figure out if we were real or just ghosts from his past. My dad took a slow step forward. Paul. That name hung in the air. Heavy, untouched for decades. Paul's jaw tightened. He didn't answer, just looked at my dad, then at me. His gaze softened slightly when he met my eyes. You look like him, he said quietly. His voice was rough, like it hadn't been used much. I swallowed. I'm Daniel's son. I didn't know you existed until yesterday. That made him blink. Just once. Lucky you, he muttered, almost to himself. We stood in silence. The wind moved leaves across the porch. Finally, Paul stepped aside. 5 minutes, he said. Then you leave. We nodded and entered. Inside, it smelled like old books and sawdust. Lonely air. The house was clean but simple. No photos. No noise. Just a kettle hissing softly in the kitchen. You tracked me down, he said. What do you want? Dad stepped forward, but Paul raised a hand. Not from you. From them. I didn't expect that. We just wanted to meet you, I said. To hear from you. After everything, we owe you that much. Paul gave a bitter laugh. You don't owe me anything. You didn't light that match. His eyes cut to Dad. Why now, he asked. Why not 20 years ago? Or 10? Or even 1? No one answered. My dad looked like a man unraveling. Because we're cowards, he finally said. And I'm the biggest one of all. Paul nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. You are. But then he looked at me. And in his eyes, something shifted. You're here now? That's something. He turned away. Tea, he asked. It was the smallest olive branch, but real. He poured the tea without a word, his hands steady but slow. The mugs didn't match. One chipped, the other stained with years. We sat at a small table by the window. No one knew how to start, so no one did. Finally, Paul looked at my dad. You ever tell them what really happened? My dad looked down. Parts of it. Paul scoffed. Convenient parts, I bet. He turned to me. Want the rest? I nodded. My throat felt tight. We were drunk, he said. Stupid. Kids trying to play adults. The fire was fast. The boy screamed once. I couldn't reach him, but I didn't confess because I was brave. I did it because he begged me to. He pointed at my dad. He had scholarships. A girl. A future. I didn't. I was already broken. I thought it was the right thing. And maybe it was. But you know what? You left me there. All of you. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Prison didn't kill me, he continued. Silence did. Your silence. The way you pretended I'd died, too. And when I came out, no letters. No visits. Not even a grave to haunt. My dad's hands were shaking now. I was ashamed, he whispered. I didn't know how to fix it. Paul leaned back. You don't fix this. You just carry it. Like a scar you earned but don't deserve. I felt something shift in the room. Not forgiveness, but air. Like someone had opened a window that hadn't moved in years. Paul looked at me again. Why are you really here, he asked. For truth? Or for peace? I didn't know. Maybe both. Maybe neither. But I answered the only way I could. Because you mattered. And no one acted like you did. For the first time, I saw him blink fast, like holding back something sharp and wet. That night, we didn't leave. Paul offered no invitation, but he didn't ask us to go, either. My brother and I took the couch. Dad stayed in the car. Said he needed air. But we knew it was guilt. Heavy, suffocating guilt. I lay there staring at the wooden ceiling. Every creak felt like a voice. Every wind gust like memory pushing through cracks. Paul didn't speak much after dinner. Just sat with his tea, staring out the window. I finally got up. Found him outside on the porch, smoking. Didn't think you smoked, I said. I didn't, he replied. Not before prison. His voice wasn't sad. Just used to it. Like someone who'd run out of reasons to lie. Do you regret it? I asked. He looked at the stars for a long time. Not taking the blame. No, but trusting that it meant something. Yeah, I thought they'd come for me. Even once. But silence, that broke more than bars. We sat in quiet for a while. Not awkward, just present, honest. "You remind me of me," he said eventually. "Not in the face, in the eyes. You see too much. You carry things you shouldn't have to." I didn't answer. He wasn't wrong. "You know," he added, "some nights I imagined this. Someone showing up, saying it wasn't all for nothing. But that dream usually ended before the porch light turned on." He smiled weakly. "This is the longest it stayed on. I don't know how to fix anything," I admitted. "I just didn't want you to disappear like you never existed." Paul looked at me for a long time. "That already happened. But maybe now, maybe I start existing again." He crushed the cigarette beneath his shoe, stood up, and patted my shoulder. "Sleep, kid. Tomorrow we talk like people, not ghosts." And just like that, something shifted. Not fixed, but real, honest. And that was enough. Morning came slow. Gray lights slipped through dusty curtains. The house felt different. Not warm, not cold, just alive in a way it hadn't been before. Paul was already in the kitchen, frying eggs like it was any other day. Dad walked in, silent. No tension, just exhaustion. Decades of it. Paul didn't look up. "Hope you still like them overcooked," he muttered. Dad nodded, sat. I held my breath. It was the most normal thing they'd done in 40 years. "I thought about visiting," Dad said quietly. 1,000 times. But I always found a reason not to." Paul didn't flinch. "That's the thing about guilt," he replied. "It doesn't chain you. You chain yourself with it." They ate in silence. Every bite a memory. Every glance a wound trying to close. "You blamed me," Paul finally asked. Dad shook his head. "I blamed myself. But I was a coward, so I acted like you never existed." "It was easier." "Easier for who?" Paul asked. "You?" "Them." He pointed to me and my brother. They grew up with half a story. A lie polished and passed down like family china. "You buried me before I was even out of prison." "I know," Dad said, voice cracking. "And if I could trade places now, I would." Paul looked at him, long and hard. "You could have, back then. But you didn't." The room went still. "But you're here now. That counts for something." That was the first time I saw them both break. Not with shouting, but with silence. What eyes? Clenched fists. Real pain. My grandma used to say men carry grief in their bones. I saw it that morning, heavy in their hands. Paul got up, walked to the sink, stared out the window. "I'm not ready to forgive you," he said. "But I'm tired of hating you." And in that sentence was more love than any apology ever spoken. It was brutal and beautiful. We stayed another day. Paul didn't say it, but we knew he wasn't ready for us to leave. Not yet. He showed us around the property, small garden, rusted shed, a dog he didn't name. Said it just wandered in and never left. "Funny," he said. "I feed it and it stays. People, not so simple." His tone was light, but the weight was there. He wasn't looking for pity, just understanding. My brother nodded. "People don't always know how to stay." They talked a while, Paul and my brother, about tools, fishing, music. Nothing deep. But that's how healing begins. Not with confessions, but with shared space. Quiet presence. A joke. A cup of coffee that isn't poisoned with history. My dad stayed distant. Not cold, just careful. He helped chop firewood without a word. Paul watched him once, then said, "You still swing like you're afraid of hurting something." Dad didn't answer, but he smiled. A little. That night, we lit a fire in the backyard. No reason, just warmth. Paul brought out a bottle of something old. "Still drink?" he asked. My dad shook his head. "Not in years." Paul poured him a glass anyway. "You earned one." The stars were endless. The kind of sky you only see when there's no light pollution or no distractions. We sat there, for men tied by blood, secrets, and regret. No one said much, but it felt okay. Not fixed, but okay. "You know," Paul finally said, "I thought if I ever saw you again, I'd punch you, or scream, or slam the door. But it turns out, I just wanted to sit near a fire and not feel like a ghost." His voice cracked, just a little. My dad raised his glass. To the fire, and to the ones who stayed in it. They clinked glasses. Small gesture, huge moment. And for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel like a wall, but a bridge. The fire was just ashes when I woke up. The house was still. I found Paul on the porch again, sipping coffee from the same old mug. He didn't look surprised to see me, just nodded like he'd been expecting it. I sat beside him, no words at first. Then I asked, "Do you ever wish you hadn't taken the blame?" He took a long sip. "Every day," he said, "but not because of prison, because it made me invisible to people I loved." Do you hate him? I asked. Paul didn't answer right away. I did. I really did. I hated how he moved on, how he raised a family while I counted years. But hate is loud, and I got tired of hearing it inside me. You could have told, I said. You could have cleared your name. He looked at me, eyes sharp. You think people care about truth? They care about comfort. Telling would have shattered everything, and no one wanted that. I felt a strange anger rise. Not at Paul, at the whole situation. So we just pretend? Keep secrets to protect everyone but the one who paid the price. Paul smirked. Now you sound like me at your age. Welcome to the circle. Didn't want to find you just for closure, I admitted. I wanted to know who my family really is. Not just the edited version. Paul nodded. Then you're braver than I was. And maybe smarter than all of us. The wind picked up. Leaves danced like whispers. What do I do now? I asked. With this story. With you. Paul stared ahead. You tell it. All of it. Not to shame, but to show we're not just our worst mistakes. He stood slowly, joints cracking. Come on, he said. Help me fix the shed roof. It leaks like hell. And just like that, we went from confession to nails and hammers. Because sometimes healing means shutting up and working side by side. The sky burned orange as the sun dipped behind the trees. We'd fixed the roof, sort of. It still creaked, still leaked in spots. But it stood. Like Paul. Like my dad. Damaged, but holding. Barely, but enough. That night felt different. Like the final page of a chapter no one thought would be written. We ate in the kitchen again. Simple food. Quiet chewing. No one said much, but it wasn't the same silence. It was gentler. My dad raised his glass. Just water this time. To second chances, he said. Paul lifted his. To people who don't run forever. My brother smiled. To the messes that still matter. I added mine last. To the truth. After dinner, Dad pulled something from his bag. An old photo, faded, bent, but still clear. 3 boys, covered in mud, grinning like kings. I kept it, he said. All these years. Paul took it, stared long, said nothing. Then slowly, carefully, he slid the photo into his shirt pocket. No speech, no forgiveness, just a gesture that said, this matters. Sometimes that's louder than words. My chest felt too small for the moment. Later, on the porch again, I asked him, do you want us to come back? Paul looked at me like I'd asked if he needed air. I don't know what I want, he said, but I know I don't want this to be goodbye. Then it won't be, I said. He nodded. Just don't expect hugs. Or birthdays. I'm not that guy. I laughed. I don't even like birthdays. He grinned. Good. Then we're off to a great start. And for the first time, he looked peaceful. That night, as we packed, no one cried. No breakdowns. Just quiet packing and shared glances that said everything. My dad put his hand on Paul's shoulder. Thank you, he said. Paul didn't speak, but he didn't pull away either. We left early, not because we had to, but because staying longer might have broken the fragile thread we'd woven. Some things, when stretched too far too soon, snap. We weren't ready for more. Not yet. Paul stood on the porch, arms crossed, dog at his feet. No waves, no words, just a nod as we pulled away. But it was enough. That nod carried more weight than any goodbye ever could. The road home felt different. Not lighter, but less suffocating. Like we'd left some of the ghosts behind. Or maybe we just met them, named them, and gave them a place to rest. Dad didn't speak much in the car, but when we stopped for gas, he handed me something. Paul's photo, now copied and laminated. For you, he said. So you remember where you come from. All of it. Weeks passed. Then months. We sent letters. Paul replied. Short ones. Direct. No fluff. But they came. Sometimes with a photo. Sometimes a memory. Sometimes a question like, you still afraid of hammers? One day we drove back. Not for drama. Not for healing. Just to visit. To help with the shed. To bring groceries. My brother fixed the mower. I painted the porch. Dad just sat next to Paul and watched the sun go down. We didn't fix everything. We didn't rewrite history. But we did something better. We started telling it honestly. And sometimes, that's all a family needs. Not perfection, just presence. So if you're listening to this thinking it's too late, trust me, it's not. The past doesn't disappear, but it can become a place you visit, not a prison you live in. And if he could forgive us, maybe you can forgive yourself too. It was strange how normal it became. Visiting Paul once a month, fixing small things, drinking terrible coffee, talking about nothing and everything. like we were catching up on years we never really had. He started opening up, slowly. Stories from prison, friends who didn't make it out, people who saved him in small ways. A guard who gave him a book, a cellmate who taught him how to survive. None of it was dramatic. All of it mattered. They think prison breaks you, he said once. But really, it just strips you down. What's left? That's who you are. Turns out, I was angrier and softer than I thought. And still looking for home. I think we became that, slowly. A kind of home. Not perfect, not constant, but real. Paul would never say it, but we knew. The way he saved our voicemails. The way he remembered what we liked on our sandwiches. The way he showed up. There was one day, we found him fixing the truck. Shirt off, scars out in the sun. My brother asked him what the biggest scar was from. Paul smiled. Not from prison, he said. From love. That one never healed clean. My dad cried that night. Quietly. Alone. I saw him through the window. Head down, hands shaking. Grief has no schedule. It just comes when something real finally settles in. And Paul, he let Dad cry. Didn't turn away. That's when I knew we'd crossed a line. From visitors to family. From apology to acceptance. No one said it. No one needed to. It was in the silence, the shared tools, the stupid jokes at sunset. And somehow, despite everything, we laughed more. Not because it wasn't still hard, but because now the weight wasn't carried alone. And even the heaviest stories feel lighter when someone else holds the other end. It happened on a Tuesday. Small thing, really. Paul said something about Mom. How she'd always known Dad messed up but stayed quiet. Dad snapped. Don't talk about her like you understand. Voice cold, eyes hard. The room froze. Paul stood still, shoulders tense. She was my mother too, he said. Or did you forget that when you buried me? The air got thick, like lightning was waiting for a place to strike. My brother tried to jump in. Come on, guys, but Paul cut him off. No, let him talk. Let him finally say what he never did. What he's been swallowing all these years like poison. Dad didn't speak. Not for a long time. Then finally, he did. I hated myself. That night. Every night after. But I hated you more. Because you were stronger. Because you did what I couldn't. And I couldn't stand the reminder. Paul didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then he sat down. Quietly. Thank you, he said. Dad blinked. For what? Paul looked up. For finally saying it. That truth was louder than any lie you ever told. It broke something. And built something. At the same time. That's the weird thing about truth. It destroys, but also plants seeds. Seeds that hurt before they heal. But they do heal. If you let them. Later, Paul gave Dad an old photo of Mom. She wouldn't have wanted this silence, he said. But I think she'd be proud of this moment. Dad nodded. Didn't cry. But his hands trembled when he took it. That night we sat outside again. Fewer words. More stars. Paul lit a cigar, passed it to Dad. Bad habit, he said. But some things are worth sharing once. Dad took a puff. Coughed. Laughed. And for once, looked yo. A few weeks later, Paul called. First time ever. No letter. No middleman. Just his voice, cracking through the static. They offered me a job, he said. At the docks. Nothing big. Just fixing engines. Think I should take it. I didn't know what to say at first. Then I realized he wasn't asking for advice. He was asking if we thought he was worth something again. If he deserved to start over. And I said, yes, you were always worth it. We just forgot how to show it. He started that job. And for the first time in decades, Paul had a routine. Work boots. Early mornings. Dirty hands. He sent us photos, smiling, covered in grease, holding a wrench like it was a trophy. We framed the first one. One day, my brother asked him, do you still think about prison? Paul shrugged. Sometimes. But now I think about tomorrow more. That's new. It hit us. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building something, even if it was small. At dinner that night, Dad raised a toast again. To Paul, he said, for teaching us that you can lose everything and still come back better. Paul just laughed. Don't jinx it, old man. But I swear, I saw his eyes shine. That night, we stayed out late, talking about everything and nothing. The kids ran in circles, their laughter echoing through the yard, while the adults sipped beers and swapped old stories. For the first time in ages, it felt like things were right. Paul cleared the grill and joined us by the fire pit. His eyes were a little tired, but there was a softness to him now, like the rough edges had been worn down. It's funny, he said, staring into the flames, how something so small, like a barbecue, can feel like the biggest victory. I knew exactly what he meant. Sometimes, it's the little moments that stitch everything back together. I smiled at him, offering him a drink. We're here, together. Isn't that enough? He took the drink, nodding. We didn't talk much after that. The silence was peaceful, full of understanding. We were no longer a family pretending to be whole. We were whole. Finally,